I'm Dr. Jeanette Raymond, psychologist, psychotherapist, relationship expert, and author of Now You Want Me, Now You Don't. And today I'm going to tell you the story of Tasha and Johnie. They had a very rocky and unstable connection, and they really didn't know why. Everything seemed to have been going well for some time, and all of a sudden they both felt like they hit a wall. She wasn't going to give in to him, and he wasn't going to give in to her, and they were like, rocks that were bashing each other into smithereens, or they were separating and there was an ocean between them, and they were no longer in touch and in closeness, and it was as if they were living on different planets. So what was happening between them? What was this difficulty? Well, one of the things that was happening was that when they were feeling close and united, it was usually because they had something that they both were against. So the things that they came together on united them because something outside them was not okay with them. They had to have a common enemy, so to speak, in order to unite. That's what would bring them together, because then they didn't have to deal with their own stuff, their own problems, their own feelings and needs and so on. They could just feel close together as people uniting against the enemy. So unfortunately, whenever Tasha enjoyed being with her friends and her family and her work colleagues, it made Johnie feel left out, insignificant, and unimportant. And of course, whenever Johnie went with his friends or his colleagues or his family, Tasha felt the same way. They couldn't kind of get their act together and feel close by enjoying both their colleagues, their friends, and their families all in one unit. So it was kind of split, and the only way they could be together was to come together against a common enemy. It might be a member of the family that they decided was an enemy, or a work colleague, or whatever. And they had a lot of trouble communicating. So when they came in to see me, here's how I helped them, and hopefully it'll help you too. What I asked them to do is to give each other one wish that they wanted from the other to fulfill. And believe it or not, they both said exactly the same thing. They wanted their partner to make them feel number one in their lives. Like everything else had to be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and whatever, or even excluded altogether. And they both realized that they were longing for the same thing. They both had the same hole inside them. They both felt like they needed their partner to fill up the hole. And then they began to talk about, like, how could they do this? Why wasn't it working? And they discovered that basically what they wanted was for their partner to throw everything else away and focus only on them, which of course was not possible. They both had to work, they had to take care of the kids, they were members of families, organizations, social events, social groups, and it was not possible. So what I helped them do is to work out ways in which they could feel number one with each other, but not all the time, not 24/7, and how to fill in that hole with other things. Like, could they be number one in other ways? And they began to have this dialogue. But what did we discover about this hole? Where did the hole come from in her? And where did that hole come from in him? Well, in her, it came from living with parents who were so obsessed and preoccupied with their work and their own personal relationship, that for Tasha, she always had that hole. And growing up, she filled it with sports. She filled it with doing things for the family and being really focused on career plans and so on. With Johnie, he never really had any parents. His mother was an alcoholic and disappeared when he was an infant, 1.5. His father fell to pieces, didn't know what to do. Sometimes he had his grandmother, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he had an aunt, sometimes he didn't. He had all his father's friends and colleagues in and out. So he never really felt cared for and somebody's number one. So he was, in his marriage now, he was longing and longing and longing for it. And he gave that job to Tasha. Tasha was longing and longing and longing, and she gave that job to Johnie. And of course, neither of them could take on that responsibility because it wasn't their job, and they couldn't do it and make up for that hole. So the other thing I helped Tasha and Johnie do was to talk to each other about their childhood, their infancy, what they could remember, what those longings were. I helped them put it into words because it was pre-language. They didn't really know how to talk about it. They didn't have a way of discussing it. So that was something they could share and feel close together on. I got them to talk about how they had tried, the ways in which they had tried to be somebody's number one when they grew up, and how disappointed they were when it didn't work, and how now they put all those years of trying into one basket, all those eggs into one basket, and that was each other, and how impossible it was for Tasha to make up for all those years for Johnie not having that feeling. And similarly, it was impossible for Johnie to fulfill all those years of Tasha being empty. And gradually, their understanding, their ability to hear and identify and empathize with one another actually did the trick. It fulfilled those holes. It filled it up. They no longer felt empty. And as they talked and empathized, they built the togetherness, and it really, really worked. And they did it more and more and more. And hopefully you will be able to do that. But acting out doesn't work. Putting each other to the test and saying, if you do this, it's proof that you love me. And if you don't, it's proof that you don't. That's not going to work. So take my advice, talk, go to therapy, find the language, understand each other's holes and pain because they're so similar. And that will be the soothing balm. That will fill up the hole. And that will keep you together instead of you threatening that the marriage is going to crumble and everything's going to fall apart because there's nothing left and you can't be intimate, you can't share, you can't have any closeness. So this is a way, a really good way. And start by going to therapy. It'll give you that foundation that you can build and fill those empty holes that will make you feel good again and ready to be each other's partners, not each other's childhood compensators. You can't do that. Enjoy the video, enjoy the therapy, and take yourself seriously by doing it in a way that fulfills both of you rather than threatens each other. Okay, look forward to hearing your comments and see them written.